Just heard Jim Webb was just on talking about how he was concerned that General McChrystal was giving speeches in London and interviews on 60 Minutes.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that subject has been aired enough. He's a great general and a great warrior and the right guy, I think, for this job. But now comes the hard part, which is what are we going to do about Afghanistan? And my view is that, as you've heard me on the show say before, it's the corruption, stupid. If we don't move to try to help fix what everyone perceives as a sham election and to help the people feel that they're getting services from their government. Military pay is siphoned off. It's a totally corrupt society. They're not going to buy into what we're doing. And we will not have the situation we had in Iraq where the Sunni population thought that fighting al-Qaeda was the better option. We have folks who want to join the Taliban, and we will not succeed by just adding troops.
So what about the 40,000 troop request? We had generals back before the Iraq War saying, give us more troops. We can't do this without more troops. If we don't give the generals what they want, aren't we just setting ourselves up for defeat?
Well, that request, which no one has seen, is very nuanced. 40,000 is the high end. The more important document is McChrystal's 65-page memo, which I have read, which makes 3 recommendations, which we should do, one of which is train their troops. We can only do that if they want to be trained. And remember that last weekend, one of their troops killed a couple of our guys as they were sleeping in a barracks after a joint patrol. Horrifying. Number 2 was fix the corruption, stupid, which I strongly believe is the centerpiece here. And number 3 was move our troops out of the boonies into the population centers. Again, last weekend, we had a Black Hawk Down situation where 8 of our troops were killed in one day in a remote location in the Hindu Kush, and we couldn't protect them. And so if we do all of those things, those are good moves. Our goal here, let's understand, is to stop al-Qaeda around the world. Al-Qaeda is not in Afghanistan right now. It's in Pakistan. And if we focus on taking out al-Qaeda in Pakistan, where the Pakistanis are helping us, and we focus on Yemen and Somalia and other places that al-Qaeda is moving, I think that that's the strategy that ought to get the primary attention.
Interesting piece of news just crossed the wires, completely off topic, if I may. But according to the Swiss Justice Ministry, Roman Polanski has been denied release and remains in custody pending extradition.
Mike Barnacle, you and your Hollywood crowd obviously must be extraordinarily shocked. There was a great piece in the New York Times Weekend Review this weekend talking about how these artists in France live by completely different standards. We don't do it that way, though, here in America.
Totally absurd. The whole thing, he should be released because he won an Academy Award, or it should be glossed over because he's an artist. But my thinking, as it's evolved around this, is what would have happened to Roman Polanski had he been a Catholic priest? I mean, he would have been immediately detained, and he'd be held forever. But because he's Roman Polanski, there's this big debate generated in America. You represent a substantial section of Southern California. Many Academy Award winners live in your district, Congresswoman. What's your take on this?
Well, first of all, Mike, a shout-out to your wife, Ann Finucane, who was honored in New York last night, along with my husband and some unknowns named Robert Redford and Salman Rushdie and Edward Shea. The arts, good, huh?
Yeah.
I understand that the prosecutors, the actual judge is no longer alive, but the prosecutor class, both nationally and in Los Angeles, are rabid about getting this guy and not having 2 standards. I don't know what the facts were in that case. What I read in the newspapers, which I'm not sure are all the facts, are pretty appalling. And yes, it's 30 years later. He's been living openly in Europe. I wonder why we're moving now. I think that's part of the most disturbing
Interesting.
thing.
We've asked that question.
Well, the thing, though, and I saw you guys talk about this last week, the double standard. Why is it, Mike, that if you're Roman Polanski, you get to live in France for 30 years? If you're Roman Polanski's cameraman, they would have dragged your butt back to jail 30 years ago. Yeah, 2 standards, again. The French embrace that. Again, as the Times talked about it, we don't embrace that. I am curious, though, 30 years later, and have we gotten the answer? Who is the person that finally said, okay, enough's enough. This guy's, we're going to yank him off the red carpets and we're going to make him serve his time. Have we heard?
My understanding, again,
is it the L.A. prosecutor?
Only from what you read, it's the L.A. County District Attorney. That the District Attorney's office is the office that moved this.
Well, but I think what started this was Polanski's attorneys made a move to finally get this thing dropped. And that stirred the pot and woke up the district attorney. Beware of what you ask for as a lawyer, since I am one.
It's going to get resolved.
And that generated this enormous pushback. I mean, he did confess to committing a crime. We're not talking about some abstraction here.
Right.
No, we're not.
No, we're not. And finally, quickly, health care reform. Are we going to get health care reform through the House with a public option?
I don't know, but I think the House will vote on a bill with a robust public option. I will vote for that. I favor that. I'm a blue dog, fiscally responsible Democrat, but I think the public option is a market-forcing mechanism and is a good thing. I don't think, based on what I read, that it will be in the Senate bill, and then we're going to have a tough conference, and the president will have to weigh in. He's hinting that he's for the public option. I surely hope that he is.
He hasn't weighed in yet, though, has he? Has that been frustrating that he hasn't weighed in more?
Well, he gave a very impressive speech on the House floor, but it was at 30,000 feet. We need to get granular here. Right. And everybody wants to know what happens to my health care. This is a real personal conversation. And my 27-year-old just got dropped by a major insurance company after an operation, so I get it, what's happening out there.
There's Tam.
All right.
Congresswoman Harman, thank you so much for joining us at the Political Roundtable.
Great to see you again, Jane.